Hello everyone, and welcome once again to my multimedia discussion board. This is for week 2 of our class in History and Theory of Public Administration. This week we were tasked at looking at 4 different articles and identifying 2 theories or articles that apply to modern day, 1 concept that needs to be updated, and 1 concept that needs to be changed. First up, I took a look at Bureaucracy by Max Weber. In the book, if you wanted to look it up or follow along, it's on page 43, section 2, entitled The Position of the Official in section 1. So Weber talks about the office holding as a vocation. And as somebody who currently works in government human resources, this really stuck out to me as I was going through these articles. It talks about requiring a certain type of training, which I thought of as examinations, prerequisites for the job, basically that they are qualified in some capacity. He also talks about the entrance into office is considered an acceptance of a specific obligation. And I think that's important, not only from where I was kind of thinking about it when I first started reading the articles on the recruitment and selection process, following civil service rules or any type of personnel rules that you may have, having a process for recruitment and selection, but also those who are maybe voted into office, but that there's some type of prerequisite for the job and that the person entering into the position understands the obligations or the responsibilities that they would have. And so for this one, I thought that it still applied to modern day, and I think that it's important that there is still the examinations, prerequisitions for the job, and some sort of scanning process for the person that's going to be entering into the position. Next up, I took a look at Frederick Taylor in Scientific Management. On page 37 in the second paragraph, you'll see the section that says, the second group of duties, which are voluntarily assumed by those on the management side, is the scientific selection and then progressive development of the workmen. Again, this kind of bounces off of Weber's, where not only is there going to be some type of prerequisite for the person entering in the position, but then the responsibility is going to be on the manager to train and prepare employees, not just the technical component, not just in the work that they do, but they're really preparing them to become management themselves. I think this is a foundational piece of leadership, and it's not always talked about in some of the articles that we read, but I do think this also aligns with working in human resources and the responsibility of what your position entails. And if you're in a managerial or supervisory position, as we're talking about leadership, this is something that I think is really important and not always emphasized on the job. And so I do think this applies to modern day as well. Next up, I took a look at Leonard White. On page 55, you'll see the enormous improvements which have been made by scientific management in some industries have raised the question whether or not equally striking improvements are feasible in government. Now, something when you think of government, you don't always think of it as being, innovative, modern, most up to date. If you compare private companies like Google or PR firms, typically in comparisons, governments are thought to be slow to move, slow to change, lots of roadblocks, lots of obligations, lots of different levels that things have to get approved. Government usually is slow to change until the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we have seen in different agencies ideas, possibilities, and new ways of working that we never thought about. We have individuals who are working from home that never thought that was a possibility. We're conducting business council meetings, commission meetings, completely virtual. Everybody is learning how to use the new technology. We have all become Zoom and team experts. And I think this is something that, concept that needs to be updated. I think that government can, when pushed in these types of scenarios, rise to be comparable to some of these other industries. And I think that the improvements that this pandemic is bringing about is really going to help us to see the government in a different light when it comes to change. Next up, I took a look at The Giving of Orders by Mary Parker Follett. On page 57 in the 5th paragraph, you will see a section that reads, when the employer is considering an order, he should also be thinking of the way to form the habits which will ensure it's being carried out. Well, I'm sorry to say, Mary, but I think that this needs a change. Habits, in my opinion, can stifle. I know that in reading the article, she was looking at things from kind of a psychological point of view, the psyche of the human brain, And I think when it comes to production, that can be something that takes a look at of how we kind of look at human behavior. But I do think that it can stifle innovation, new ideas, and creating efficiency. I think that forming habits and trying to stick to habits is something that I relate to what you can often hear in government is, this is the way we've always done it. And so I think giving people the power to be innovative, that not only is the habit something that can make you, be able to memorize a task or do the task at hand that's being assigned to you, way of learning something, but I think that we need to also talk about giving employees that you're supervising the opportunity to come up with new ways of doing things, a new way of thinking. That's the best part about being collaborative. So again, as I was reading this article and looking at that particular section, it stood out to me as something that might need to change. So again, thank you. I really found this week's reading very interesting. As you'll start to see in my presentations, I'm often looking at things from a human resources perspective, and so these are very interesting to see the modern concept and modern readings of our leadership styles and theories. Thank you.